You know what nobody tells you about success? The higher you climb, the lonelier it gets. I'm standing here today, and yes, I've built companies, I've made billions, I've spoken to thousands of people at once, but let me tell you something that might shock you. There were nights when I had everything and felt like I had nothing. Nights when I was surrounded by hundreds of employees, thousands of investors, millions of users, and I felt more alone than when I was that English teacher making $12 a month. At least back then, my loneliness made sense. But when you're successful and still feel empty, when you're in a room full of people who know your name but don't know your heart, that's when loneliness becomes terrifying. I remember this one evening in 2003, Alibaba was finally starting to work. We had just moved to a bigger office. There were maybe 400 people working for me. There was this company party. Everyone was celebrating, laughing, toasting to our success. And I stood there, glass in my hand, smile on my face, and I felt like I was watching everything through a window. Like I was outside looking in at my own life. Everyone wanted to talk to me, but nobody wanted to really talk to me. They wanted to talk to Jack Ma, the CEO, not Jack the human being, who still felt like that rejected English teacher inside. That night, I went home early, and my wife found me sitting in the dark. She asked me what was wrong, and I couldn't explain it. How do you tell someone that success feels like drowning in shallow water? Let me tell you why you feel alone even when you're never actually alone. It's because somewhere along the way, we replaced connection with connectivity. We replaced conversations with comments. We replaced friends with followers. We replaced depth with data. You have 1,000 friends on social media, but nobody to call at 3 a.m. when your world is falling apart. You get hundreds of likes on your photos, but nobody sees the pain behind your smile. You're more reachable than ever, but less reached than ever before. When I was young and poor, I had 3 real friends. We would sit by the West Lake in Hangzhou, sharing 1 bottle of beer between us, because that's all we could afford. We would talk until sunrise about our dreams, our fears, our crazy ideas. We knew each other's souls. Now I know thousands of people. I have contacts all over the world. But how many people really know me? How many people know that I still have nightmares about failing? How many people know that sometimes I stand in front of thousands giving speeches while feeling like that same boy who was rejected from every job he applied to? I learned something profound about loneliness when Alibaba was at its peak. Everyone wanted to be near me, but not because they wanted to know me. They wanted to know my secrets, my strategies, my connections. Every conversation had an agenda. Every friendship had a price tag. Every invitation had an expectation. And slowly, without realizing it, I built walls. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to protect myself from being consumed by everyone who wanted a piece of what I had built. But here's what I discovered in my deepest moments of isolation. Loneliness is not about being alone. Loneliness is about being disconnected from your purpose. It's about living a life that looks successful on the outside, but feels meaningless on the inside. It's about achieving everything you thought you wanted, and realizing it's not what you needed. You can be in the middle of Times Square, surrounded by millions, and feel like the only person on earth if you don't know why you're there. I see this epidemic everywhere now. Young people with hundreds of digital friends, but nobody who truly sees them. Successful professionals who have everything except peace. Parents who provide everything for their children except their presence. We're all performing our lives instead of living them. We're all curating our image instead of cultivating our soul. We're all so busy being connected that we forgot how to connect. Let me share something with you that changed my perspective completely. There was this period when I was traveling constantly. New York, London, Tokyo, back to back to back. Important meetings, huge decisions, billions of dollars being discussed, and I realized I hadn't had a real conversation in months. Every word I spoke was calculated. Every interaction was strategic. I was never just Jack anymore. I was always on, always performing, always being who everyone expected me to be. One night in a hotel room in London, probably the fanciest hotel you can imagine, I called my mother. Not for any reason. Just to hear her voice. And she told me about her garden, about the tomatoes that weren't growing properly, about the neighbor's cat that kept stealing fish. For 30 minutes, we talked about nothing important. And it was the most important conversation I'd had in years. Because for those 30 minutes, I wasn't a CEO. I wasn't a billionaire. I wasn't a symbol. I was just her son, listening to her talk about tomatoes. That's when I understood. We're lonely because we've forgotten how to be human with each other. We've forgotten how to have conversations without agenda. We've forgotten how to sit in silence without feeling awkward. We've forgotten that the most profound connections happen not when we're trying to impress each other, but when we're brave enough to be unimpressive, to be ordinary, to be real. You want to know the truth about why you feel alone? It's because you're hiding. You're hiding behind your success or hiding behind your failures. You're hiding behind your social media filters and your professional titles. You're hiding behind the story you tell yourself about who you're supposed to be. And when you hide your true self, you guarantee that nobody will ever really find you. You become a ghost in your own life, haunting the edges of real connection but never quite touching it. I spent years building walls around myself, thinking I was protecting my success. But walls that keep pain out also keep love out. Walls that keep disappointment out also keep joy out. I became so good at being strong that I forgot it's okay to be vulnerable. I became so good at having answers that I forgot it's okay to have questions. I became so good at being Jack Ma, the icon, that I almost forgot how to be Jack the person. There's this beautiful paradox I discovered. The more successful you become, the more you need real connection, but the harder it becomes to find it. Everyone sees what you've built, but nobody sees what it cost you. Everyone wants to celebrate your victories, but nobody wants to sit with your doubts. Everyone wants to be associated with your success, but nobody wants to be present for your struggles. But here's what I want you to understand. Your loneliness is not a weakness. It's a signal. It's your soul telling you that something needs to change. It's your heart reminding you that you were not made to live in isolation. No matter how crowded your world appears, we are beings built for connection, real connection, not the artificial substitute we've accepted as normal. I learned that there are two types of loneliness. There's the loneliness of isolation, when you're actually alone, physically separated from others. This type of loneliness is simple to solve. Go out, meet people, join communities. But then there's the loneliness of disconnection, when you're surrounded by people, but nobody really sees you. This is the loneliness that eats at your soul. This is the loneliness that makes you question everything. When I was teaching English for $12 a month, I was often alone, but I wasn't lonely. My students and I had real connection. We were all struggling together, dreaming together, growing together. There was no pretense, no performance, just humans helping humans. But when I became successful, when I became somebody people wanted to know for what I could do for them rather than who I was, that's when the real loneliness began. You know what's tragic? We live in the most connected age in human history, and we are the loneliest generation that has ever existed. We can reach anyone in the world in seconds, but we can't reach the person sitting next to us. We know everything about everyone's life, but we know nothing about anyone's heart. We have more ways to communicate than ever before, but less to actually say to each other. I see young people today, and my heart breaks. They're measuring their worth in likes and followers. They're performing their lives for strangers on the internet while feeling invisible to the people right in front of them. They're so busy building their online presence that they're absent from their real life. And then they wonder why they feel empty, why success feels hollow, why achievement feels meaningless. Let me tell you something I wish someone had told me earlier. The cure for loneliness is not more people. It's not more success, more recognition, more followers. The cure for loneliness is authenticity. It's having the courage to show up as yourself, not as who you think you should be. It's choosing one real conversation over 1,000 surface interactions. It's deciding that being known by one person is worth more than being admired by millions. I made a decision a few years ago that changed everything. I decided to stop trying to be Jack Ma all the time and start being Jack again. I started having conversations where I admitted I didn't have all the answers. I started sharing my fears with people I trusted. I started saying, I don't know, when I didn't know. And something magical happened. The more human I allowed myself to be, the more human connections I experienced. But it requires courage. Enormous courage. Because being real means being vulnerable. It means letting people see your flaws, your doubts, your struggles. It means admitting that behind all your achievements, you're still that person who feels not good enough sometimes. It means tearing down the image you've worked so hard to build and letting people see the construction site underneath. There's something else I need to tell you about loneliness and success. Sometimes it's necessary. Sometimes you need to be alone with your vision because nobody else can see it yet. When I was starting Alibaba, talking about the internet to people who had never seen a computer, I was completely alone in my belief. My vision isolated me. People couldn't come with me because they couldn't see where I was going. And that's okay. Some journeys you have to take alone, at least at the beginning. But here's the key. Don't let temporary isolation become permanent loneliness. Don't let the necessary solitude of vision become the unnecessary prison of pride. Yes, sometimes you have to walk alone, but you don't have to stay alone. Once you reach your destination, turn around and help others join you. Build bridges back to connection. I think about all the entrepreneurs who come to me now, and they all ask the same question in different ways. How do I handle the loneliness? Because they're discovering what I discovered, that success without connection is just successful failure. That winning while feeling alone is actually losing. That having everything while feeling nothing is the cruelest joke life can play on you. So here's my advice, and it comes from years of learning this the hard way. Protect your humanity more than you protect your success. Guard your ability to connect more than you guard your reputation. Value the people who knew you before you were somebody more than the people who only know you as somebody. Keep at least one relationship where you're just you, not your title, not your achievement, not your potential value to someone. Find your tribe, but understand it might be small. You don't need hundreds of friends. You need 3 or 4 people who see through all your success and failure to the person underneath. People who would still sit with you if you lost everything tomorrow. People who love you not for what you've built, but for who you are when you're not building anything. And please remember this. Everyone you meet is fighting their own loneliness. The CEO in the corner office, the janitor cleaning that office, the superstar on stage, the fan in the audience, we're all carrying this same weight. We're all wondering if anyone really sees us. We're all afraid that if people knew the real us, we wouldn't be enough. So be kind. Be present. Be real. You might be the only authentic connection someone has today. The world doesn't need more successful people. The world needs more connected people. People who choose depth over surface. Who choose presence over performance. Who choose authenticity over image. People who understand that the greatest failure is not failing at business or career. It's failing at being human with other humans. I'm telling you all this because I want you to understand that if you feel alone in your crowded world, you're not broken. You're awake. You're aware that something is missing in how we're living. You're conscious that all this connection isn't adding up to feeling connected. And that awareness is the first step to change. Start small. Have one real conversation today. Tell someone how you really feel, not how you think you should feel. Ask someone how they really are, and wait for the real answer, not the polite one. Share something you're struggling with instead of another achievement. Be vulnerable before you're ready. That's where connection lives. In the space between who we pretend to be and who we really are. Your loneliness is not your enemy. It's your teacher. It's showing you what needs to change. It's pointing you toward what really matters. Listen to it. Learn from it. But don't let it become your identity. You're not alone in feeling alone. We're all in this together, separately, waiting for someone brave enough to go first. To be real. To admit that success without connection is the ultimate failure. The crowd around you isn't the problem. The crowd inside you is. All the voices telling you to be someone else, to want something else, to pretend something else. Quiet those voices. Find your true voice, and then use it. Someone out there needs to hear it. Someone out there is waiting for permission to be real too. Your authenticity might be the key that unlocks someone else's prison of loneliness. Remember, we're all just humans trying to figure this out. No amount of success changes that. No amount of failure changes that either. We're all just walking each other home, and the only way home is through real connection. So be brave enough to connect. Be vulnerable enough to be seen. Be humble enough to admit you need others. That's not weakness. That's the ultimate strength.